Yeah, you know it's spooky sewing season. Hello and welcome to my channel, Haylee Marie Vintage. Today I'm very excited. We're doing another Gunne Sax pattern because I have a problem and I love them. Almost all the dresses I've made with Gunne Sax patterns have been one of my all-time favorite makes. And this time, because it's 6 weeks of spooky sewing, we are going to do a kind of spooky themed one. So first let's talk about the pattern. And this is the pattern I have here. It's McCall's 7665. I had to print it out because this is an online pattern. The paper does come, but she sends the instructions by email and you have to print them on your own. I've used her pattern before on this channel when I made my unicorn gunny sack. This is another pattern in the collection that I'm really excited to use. Kind of meant to be worn with a long sleeve under it, which is ideal for autumn. However, you can wear it without it, which is great because then this dress can be multi-seasonal for me. And then I really like it has like quite a few different fabrics used in it, and so I'm pretty excited about that. I am only going to use 2 fabrics, but I think it'll still be super cute. So let's talk about the fabrics here. This is the first fabric. I think you can probably see it's flowers with spider webs in it and little spiders hanging off it. I really like the subtleness of the spookiness, so this won't just be a Gunne Sax I want to wear around Halloween, but I'll be like able and willing to wear it all year round. And I think it's really cute. This is, I think it's spooky and sweet or sassy and sweet. Spooky and sweeter fabric. I picked this up at my favorite local place, Style Maker Fabric, but it also is sold all over Etsy, and I'm excited. I also really like the colors of this. Like, I liked the mauve and the oranges and stuff together, which brings me to our next thing, which is the trim. So I'm going to use just like a basic crochet trim for the lace on this, but instead of that third fabric color, I want to use these really, really beautiful rayon velvet ribbons. I think this will add just a really nice, pretty touch to this dress, and I just really like these colors together. I think it's really, really nice. And then the last fabric, which is going to be our accent fabric, is also from the Spooky and Sweeter collection. Sweet and Spookier, that's very confusing. Maybe they change it year to year. This is one of their releases this year. The other fabric I bought last year. The other fabric's from my stash. This one I bought to accent that fabric. And it's just a nice striped version that like matches with it, and I think will look really, really, really cute with it. So that is the scoop on this project. I anticipate this project to take quite a while because there's going to be a lot of trim and details, and cutting out as many pieces as this pattern takes always takes quite a while. So definitely stay tuned and stay with me. This will probably be a several day project, but I'm so excited about it. I'm not going to make the blouse in the picture. I think this blouse is really cute. However, I have enough blouses in my wardrobe that I don't feel like I need to make a new blouse for this project. And I have a bunch of like plans to make some different white blouses to wear with things like this in the future. And so I don't want to really just like make a white blouse to make a white blouse, you know, especially because blouses are so much work. I'm so excited. I've been thinking about this dress in January when I bought the first fabric with the spider webs, and I've just been dreaming about it, and it's so exciting to finally get to see my dreams go into reality. So with that, let's go ahead and hop into cutting out the fabric. So before I do anything else, my first step is to alter my pattern the way I want to get the lacings in the front. So here I am just tracing this pattern piece, putting in all the markings, all that jazz, and then I'm just gonna draw one line down the front. I think I went with a 3/8 measurement this time to get it a little bit narrower, and then cutting in down at the bottom. This will just make the lacing so it is like see-through. This is straightforward. I like to obviously do it on a tracing and preserve the original piece in case one day I don't want to do that. And then I am also replicating these changes to make a new facing. And then first I started with cutting the stripes because I was pretty particular in what direction I wanted the stripes to be in. I wanted them to be up and down on my body everywhere except for the belt band where they would then go across. So I have some kind of weird pattern placement happening here where it maybe isn't in the most intuitive spot, but I just did that because I wanted to make sure everything was going the directions I wanted to. And then for these pieces, I went ahead and I shortened the skirt piece by I think 4 inches. So that way I wouldn't have to hem it as much and would have more full flow at the bottom. And then other than that, I'm just cutting out these pieces kind of however I desire. This is kind of a directional print in that the flowers go up and down, but not so directional. I need them all to be going exactly the same way. So I'm just making sure all of my patterns are up and down on these flowers, at least the pieces that are on the outside. The first step here is to sew my princess seams and my darts that are in the back of this pattern, as well as then sewing the front and things like that together. This is just easy first steps I can knock out of the way. I was pretty eager to get the bodice to the point where I could start putting in trim. First, I sewed down the white trim, and then after that, I sewed the ribbon on top of it so it could cover kind of the edge of that white trim. These are the up and down parallel lines that are on the bodice, so you just need the front all sewn together to figure this out. And then I used markings, so you're supposed to technically have a contrast fabric here. I just wanted more of the spiderweb fabric on the top, so I ignored that. So yeah, I'm just figuring out where to put these vertical lines. And then here I'm doing the ribbons with purple thread. Again, I'm just going up and down, and I am doing both sides. And on this ribbon, since it's velvet, I was trying to not have it like look funky and get my stitches as close to the edge as possible. And then my next step is just to sew all of the, not really facings, but that contrast fabric that goes on the outside. They kind of look like facings, to get those all sewn together and ready to go. And then here I am pinning the front bodice to the back bodice, as well as pinning all the facings. This one has armhole facings as well as neck facings. I did completely have to redraw the neck facing pattern to go with the adjustments I made to the lacings. And then here I am just going ahead and sewing those pieces. I was just trying to get as much of this done kind of in bulk, where I'm getting as much sewn as I can while sitting down before getting up and ironing them, which is why you kind of see me doing them all at a time right now. And then here I am sewing that contrast fabric on. So technically in the pattern instructions, it tells you to fold over the edge before sewing it down, but I knew it was going to be covered by lace and ribbon, so I didn't bother to do that. And then the outside is also stitched down. This one though, I did a 5/8 stitch on the outside because that's going to help me know exactly where the trim goes. And then here I am just taking that trim and I'm following that basting line that I did on the outside that was 5/8 away. I have it pointing inward because this is going to sandwich between the two pieces and pull back out to line the neck edge. And then I'm doing the same thing on the outside. I am real quick sewing those down to follow the stitching line that went around the outside, so that way I can really be sure these edges are going to be covered, because I will cover most of the white tape that you see there with the ribbon. And then, of course, I am doing the ribbon here. I do want to know, I have to change the thread out a lot for this project. Initially, I was going to use white thread on the white lace, but that became very apparent that it was not going to be a very fun thing to do. So instead, I went ahead and started to just use the either black or the purple on that trim, since in theory, the stitching there would be covered up. And it's pretty hard to believe, but we're already getting pretty close to the end of the bodice and making it. I am just folding these facing edges in and stitching them down 1/4 inch so they have finished edges when they're put in. And we've already gotten to the task of sewing the facing to the bodice. I'm pretty pleased on how fast I feel like I was able to do this trim, since it was rather complex. And then to make sure the trim flips out exactly the way I want, I feel like it's important to note that when I'm sewing these down, I'm following that basting line that I put in when I sewed in the trim on the edges. And then I also am making sure in between things to clip the seams, and then I'm going to understitch everything to make sure these facings are nice and flat. Good morning. So we are next day. I did my cutting and the whole bodice in the same day. It's just kind of how things ended up working out. But here is my bodice. It's that because I don't have the lacing threaded, it kind of just like separates really wildly. I really like this bodice. I think this is turning out really cute and I can't wait to make this skirt. I love this fabric. I like the combo. I like the ribbon and lace I chose, so I'm feeling pretty good about this. Today, basically the goal is to finish the dress. I think that will hopefully be not too hard, and I think I'm getting much faster at doing things with details. When I did my first Gunne Sax, it definitely took a lot longer to get to a similar place, so it's pretty exciting to be getting faster at these. I think Spooky's gonna come say hi. Yeah, you know it's spooky sewing season, so here you are. I guess I'll take it over here since, nope, come here, Spunks. Okay. She wants to be right in front of the sewing at all times. Before I hop into the rest of sewing, this is your reminder that making my channel and doing all these projects takes a lot of time and money. And so if you feel inclined, you can definitely buy me a coffee over on Ko-fi. I have it linked down below. I always appreciate the support. It always makes my day. And with that spiel all finished up, we can go ahead and hop into the sewing. All right, we're kicking today off by getting lots of big pieces of things done at once. So here, the way they have this basically constructed is you sew the top 4 panels together and the bottom 4 panels together, and then you sew those pieces together. So that way they're all in continuous lines. So here I am sewing the skirt top, which is the floral, as well as the striped like bottom level too. You'll see what I'm talking about in just a little bit. It's kind of hard to see what's happening right now. And as always, we are finishing these seams. Since this is a simple cotton, I am just using pinking shears, super easy and no problem. And then I of course will be pressing these open to keep everything nice and neat looking. And here is where what I was talking about earlier becomes apparent. So here I am sewing that bottom band onto the top skirt portion. And this they have, again, you sew all of these pieces together this way, so that way you don't have weird bits where the flowers end and the stripes begin at different levels. This way it's all one continuous line. And then I did sew these down the normal way, but I also went ahead and understitched them to where the flowers are. I just wanted to make sure I got that fabric caught and kind of in a finished way, and I knew this would be covered by trim later. I'm still feeling like we got here really fast, but I'm already attaching the bodice to the skirt. I went back and forth on a few different things because I was debating doing the trim on the skirt before I did the bodice, but the reason I waited is because I thought I might want to vary the size of the trim in the skirt, and so as a result I needed to kind of figure out some things in the bodice trimmings before I could do that. But ideally most of the time I would have trimmed the skirt before this. So I'm sewing the waist seam down. So there's nothing too special here. Again though, I am going to be clipping the edges and sewing them with an understitch to keep them nice and neat and flat, because again this will be covered by trim later. So I am back to focusing on not having a cruddy zipper, which means I am using some double-sided interfacing tape to get the zipper just a little bit more firm and easy to work with. So I'm just putting this tape inside, and then of course you iron it down to fuse it. And yeah, this just really helps make my zipper significantly nicer because the fabric just is so much sturdier and doesn't slip around as much when I'm sewing it. And then I'm just sewing the zipper down on in here. Nothing really complicated here. This is a placket. I've started to do more of a placket as opposed to a down the middle double. This just works better for me and is how my zippers end up nicer than if I go with the zipper down the middle. Do what works for you. This is just what works for me. And now we're getting pretty close to where I'm going to be sewing the ties on. The order for this is interesting again to keep kind of like the fun trim detail look. The reason this is in an interesting order of operations is they have you sewing down basically the tie before you then sew down the waistband detail thing. So here I have already basted down the tie, and I am just working on getting my machine to the middle of this garment to stitch on this waistband. This is just a rectangle waistband that I'm stitching all the way around the perimeter of the rectangle. And then after that, I am stitching down the lace that the ribbon will move kind of side by side with. This is where I really regret eyeballing it and not using my gauge. I thought I kept everything pretty parallel and steady, but I definitely did not, and we went a little bit askew in areas here. And then of course we're putting in the ribbon on top of it to cover that really firm lace edge. You can see how there's bigger trim around the bottom of the waist. This is going to be similar trim to what I decided to use with the skirt, and this is why I wanted to get the bodice sewn before trimming the skirt, is I felt like I could figure out exactly which trim I was then going to be using for the skirt. And now we're getting really close to the end here. I am just working away on this hem. So I am folding this 1/4 of an inch up to get a clean edge before I am then going through and basting over this fold that I've made to put in some gathering stitches. Since I am down and around at the bottom of this skirt, I decided it was time to put in the trim. I didn't pre-pin this just because it kind of works like a bias binding and I know it's going right against that edge. So I have a really easy guide that makes it so it's not going to get crooked. And then I'm doing the exact same thing with the velvet trim. I will note with both the lace and the velvet trim, once I get all the way around the big long circle, I then cut an end with enough space left to fold it over so that way I don't have raw ends of trims showing. And of course I have to give you some spooky time with this spooky Gunne Sax. As always, Spooky is the best little sewing companion, although she's a little troublesome. She's very cute. But here I am just sewing down the skirt. So I've done this off camera, but you can see it in other videos where I've used those gathering stitches I put in to ease it into the hem, ironed that down, and then just hand sewing it to give it that really nice invisible hem finish. Definitely a good thing to know how to do, and one of the best tricks I've ever picked up from an older pattern. And with everything done, the last step is for me to lace up this cording. This is a really beautiful orange color that matches the fabric, and I think I might end up redoing this. I kind of did like a spirally looking one because there's like no every other in which one's crossing over, and I have kind of mixed feelings about this, but I do always just really enjoy this lacing up process in general. But with this done, we are now all ready for the reveal. All right, we have finished the reveal. If I yell anything crazy all of a sudden, it's because my cat is down below me being very crazy because I just got home from work and she needs all the attention. But enough of all that. Before I talk about my actual wrap up and my final thoughts on this dress and this pattern, I'm first going to talk about the cost breakdown of this garment. As far as fabric went, I bought I think around 10 yards for this project, and I only think I ended up needing 6, so I could have definitely decreased my costs in fabric. However, these are the fabrics I bought from this, and they totaled $123.45. So I could have probably gotten this to about $80 worth of fabric if I hadn't overbought, and I am going to sell off the remainder of that fabric on my Mercari, and also I will be linking everything else I bought for this project. So for notions, I have that velvet ribbon, I have all the lace I used, as well as the zipper and the thread. That came to a total of $39.88. Honestly, for how high quality that velvet trim was, that feels like a pretty good deal. And then the cotton lace that I get is so high quality, it's really beautiful. I'll link it down below. It's by one of my favorite Etsy shops, but do note they do ship from Singapore, so it does take a while to get your things, but it is more than worth it. Sorry, I'm now looking behind you because my cat has turned on my LED candles. So we're having a vibe here. Anyway, pattern. So I bought this pattern from the same person I bought a few of my Gunne Sax like traced patterns from. She does take a little bit to deliver, however, it's fine. Just like I definitely wouldn't order from her if you're in a rush, unless you sent her a message first. That pattern was $49.61. I think this was a $45 pattern and most of her other patterns are $40. So this was like a little bit more expensive, but honestly, for a Gunne Sax pattern, not too bad. And this brought us to a supply total of $212.94. I feel pretty good about having spent this on this dress because if there was ever a like spider web type Gunne Sax out there, it would be like a gajillion dollars. Like it would probably not sell for under $1,000. So $212 feels like a good price for this. And also this was really satisfying for me to make. I am absolutely in love with this dress and I had a lot of fun making it and a lot of fun like figuring out what fabrics I put together with what trim and stuff like that. Like this was a really fulfilling project for me. Even though the materials were pretty expensive, I feel like I got a lot out of it. Our last thing we talk about here is labor hours. So the reason I talk about labor here is a lot of times we're paying really low prices for garments, and all garments are made by human hands, by seamstresses, and a lot of them are not paid living wages. So I'm just do this little segment to like talk about how much labor actually goes into a dress like this, so you can start thinking critically about what a garment worker is being paid when you're paying $50 for a dress. This dress took me 14 hours. I expected that. There's a lot of trim and detail on this dress. And even though a lot of times when I get up to the 14 and 15 hour range, I tend to have like a lot of hand sewing involved, I have almost no hand sewing on this. It's just really primarily from having to put in all that trim. So I'm not surprised by that. I went with the seamstress wage here in Seattle, which it looks to be about $25 when I look on like Glassdoor and stuff like this. 14 times 25 is $350 for labor. That's quite a lot of labor. That's expensive. That brings us to a total of $562.94. If somebody was to sell this and give themselves an actual profit for their labor. Again, gunny saxes have gotten so expensive that it's not like this price feels particularly wild to me, but it is a really expensive dress. That basically wraps up this budget. Let's go ahead and jump into talking about the dress. I absolutely love this dress. I know that is probably not surprising. I've made 4 or 5 gunny sax like dresses on this channel at this point. If I was going to rank this would be either a close second or a first with my unicorn gunny sax dress. I really adore that dress. I really like this dress. I feel like both have really different purposes and vibes. I love this one. I love this fabric. I love the like subtle spider webs in it and stuff like that. Like that's just like super my vibe. I really like spooky clothes, but I don't wear that much like overt spooky. Like I like there to be kind of more of like a refinement or sophistication as opposed to like a kitschy type thing with spooky for me. I don't know why that's how I feel, but because I love kitschy like spring stuff, but I feel like fall I start to get a little bit more moody and aesthetic. I also absolutely love my trim choices with this. I think these trims turned out beautifully. I went back and forth on what trim I was using a bunch, and I absolutely love these. These were absolutely the right option. And then I have been loving using colored cording. I think it just like adds even more detail to the fact this is like a corset lace up. Like sometimes I feel like when it's done with the white cording and the white lace, you can kind of miss it. But with something like this, it's a lot clearer and more defined. And I like the use of like this larger trim here. And so that way then I could use it around the bottom of the skirt. I just felt like this little trim up at the top wouldn't read as richly on the skirt because it's such a bigger piece. So that is why I did that. This does flip up. So I do think at some point I might go in and hand stitch this down so it stops like flipping up. As far as things that like I may be less excited about this dress, literally the only flaw is this waistband here. It's okay. It's definitely crooked, which is not ideal. I wish I could tell it when I was like sewing it, it was going on crooked, and I thought it didn't matter that much, but I definitely notice it. However, it's not a deal breaker, and if I really decide it annoys me, it was the last thing I did, so I can always unpick the whole thing and redo it. And honestly, I don't think I care enough to do that. That's like literally the only flaw I have about this dress. I continue to be back on my zipper game. This zipper is not bubbly. I have my little hook and eye that I put in with my hand sewing. I just love this dress. This dress makes me feel beautiful and yeah, kind of spooky, maybe a little bit mysterious, but it still also feels really true to that like super girly and feminine thing that I kind of like in my style. All things considered, with how complex this garment is, how flawless it feels for me, it feels really, really good. Again, this is another project that I feel like I really grew in my sewing capabilities, and that's just always really nice to feel when you're done with a project. But with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up this video. We still have 2 weeks left of spooky season, So definitely stay tuned for those. I have some really fun projects coming up on those. So if you do want to see those, definitely subscribe and stick around. I would love to have you. And then as always, you can always support me via commenting down below, liking this video, and if you feel the desire, you can go buy me a coffee over on Ko-fi. I always appreciate that. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye, and I will see you next time.